So day one of Culture Amp, I had decided that after 13 years working for Hollywood, after 5 years of CEO of that company, that I needed to challenge myself to try and do something different, to try and build something bigger. And so given that I had a background in software engineering, I decided to step out and build a software company. And I kept asking myself, what was I most passionate about? And I kept coming back to people and culture. So I knew that broadly I wanted to build something in the organizational development space. How could I create something with software that would help people and help companies do better at this problem? And actually day one of being Culture Amp was actually, before I knew the name, I was sitting down on pieces of paper trying to work out 2 words that I could put together to create a domain name that I could own. And Culture Amp actually was the process of all of that. It was short for Culture Amplify. And it gave me a word that nobody else had and one that I felt was directionally aligned with where I wanted to go. I had the world's most naive business plan. 10,000 by 10,000 equals 100 million. And so the idea was I wanted to build a business where tens of thousands of companies were willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year with my company. Why $10,000? The first thing was, from the beginning, I've always been focused on business to business rather than B2C. And it was interesting when I started this company at the time, certainly from an investment point of view, everybody wanted to do B2C, whereas I've always been interested in the relationships between businesses and the opportunities and the values that needed to be created there. And so I wanted to solve a real problem for people. I wanted to solve a problem that could change working life. And it was not going to be a $9 a month or something. It was going to be people are willing to pay to some extent to the size of the problem that you're solving. But the other tension that I had too was that I don't believe that the future of software is $1 million deals. It's not companies buying massive systems that once they've invested in, they can't move off of. What we're seeing is increasing agility. So I wanted to almost make it as a goal from the beginning to force myself to create simpler, lighter, easier tools, technologies that everybody could use, rather than just trying to solve a problem for a very small part of the market. So when I started Culture Amp, I was still living in Adelaide, and my wife and I were deciding whether we would move to another city and try and challenge ourselves further, and we ended up making the decision to move to Melbourne. So I moved to Melbourne and had started the business, and I was sort of pushing around the edges, writing code, which is something I can do, but not necessarily my strong point. And I came out here and I was invited to a dinner by somebody that I had spoken alongside, Tom Howard from Adioso. And so I came to this dinner and I met a bunch of people here in Melbourne that got together every month. They were all entrepreneurs and just talked about what they were doing. And at that dinner, I met John Williams and Doug English, who became my co-founders. And they said to me, where are you working from? So I'm working from home. They said, you should come into this place called I9, Inspire 9. That's where we work from. So it was a little place down in Cremorne. There was about 10 of us. Nathan Sampignon set it up. And so I went there, and actually for the next 6 months, I sat next to John and Doug, and we were both working on our own businesses. And after about 6 months, we sort of looked at each other and thought, this is a really crazy idea, but we should join forces. And at that point, they'd been trying to get this other person, Rod Hamilton, to join them. So he came into the mix, and the 4 of us decided that if we were going to do this, we'd be better off together, and that's how Culture Amp was started. Winning Adobe as a client was a pretty major milestone. We're at that point, that was only 9 months into the life of the company. And we spent a lot of time where they turned around to us and kept saying, are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you can deliver to a company of our size? And that was probably where I was lucky to have worked in film, where I was used to being thrown big problems that you had to work out how to solve. And no matter what, you never drop the ball. You always deliver. And so I could fall back on that. And I went to them and I actually said, you'll be demanding, I'm sure. You can't be as demanding as Spielberg was. I'm sure we're fine. We'll make this work. And we did. And in fact, the person that we worked with gave us feedback afterwards that internally, she'd been counseled that choosing us could potentially affect her career. But she put herself on the line for us, and it worked out fantastically. And I think it worked out really fantastically for her as well. So that moment when somebody on the other side of the world in an amazing company looks at us and says, you're the people that can solve my problem. I believe in you. That was probably the moment when we knew it was going to work.